Just a housewife who makes decent sandwiches. My husband Marcus laughed to his colleagues at the company Christmas party. His boss went pale. Sir, that's Dr. Elena Martinez, the neurosurgeon who saved my daughter's life. I didn't correct my husband. I did this. By Monday morning, he was unemployed. The crystal chandelier cast warm light across the hotel ballroom, but nothing could warm the chill that had settled in my chest. I stood there in my simple black dress, the one Marcus had picked out because it was appropriate for a spouse, watching my husband of 8 years perform for his audience. Elena here keeps me well-fed and the house spotless, Marcus continued, his arm draped around my shoulders like I was a prize he'd won at a carnival. Not everyone can handle being married to someone in tech. Takes a special kind of woman to be content with the simple life. His colleagues nodded politely. Most of them had met me before at these quarterly gatherings, but Marcus always introduced me the same way. The devoted wife. The happy homemaker. The woman whose greatest achievement was remembering to pick up his dry cleaning. I smiled and said nothing, just as I had for the past 3 years. Must be nice having someone to take care of everything at home, said Janet from HR, her voice carrying that particular tone women use when they're trying to be supportive but can't quite hide their pity. Oh, it is, Marcus beamed. Elena gave up her little job when we got serious. Couldn't have her stressed about work when I needed support building my career. She's much happier now. My little job. That's what he called 15 years of medical school, residency, and a neurosurgery fellowship. My little job that he'd convinced me to take a break from after our wedding, when his demands for networking events and business dinners became a full-time schedule. Besides, Marcus continued, his voice getting louder as the wine took effect, she wasn't really cut out for the pressure anyway. All that responsibility? She's much better suited to domestic life. Aren't you, sweetheart? I was about to excuse myself to the restroom when I heard a sharp intake of breath behind me. Dr. Martinez? I turned. Standing there was a tall man with silver hair and kind eyes that I recognized immediately. David Chun, the CEO of Marcus's company. But more importantly, he was the father of Sophie Chun. Sophie, who I'd operated on 18 months ago. A 7-year-old girl with a brain tumor that 3 other surgeons had deemed inoperable. Sophie, whose surgery had taken 14 hours and every ounce of skill I'd accumulated in my career. Sophie, who was now tumor-free and playing soccer again. Dr. Elena Martinez, David said, his voice cutting through the ambient chatter like a scalpel. I've been hoping to meet you again. The conversation around us died. Marcus's arm dropped from my shoulders. I'm sorry, Marcus stammered. I think there's been some confusion. This is my wife, Elena. She's not a doctor. David's eyes never left mine. Sir, this is Dr. Elena Martinez, one of the most brilliant neurosurgeons in the state. She saved my daughter's life. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel 20 pairs of eyes boring into me, waiting for an explanation. Marcus's face had gone from flushed pink to bone white. There must be some mistake, Marcus said weakly. Elena's never mentioned. Because you never asked, I said quietly. It was the first time I'd spoken in 10 minutes, and my voice carried across the suddenly silent group like a confession. David stepped closer, his expression shifting from recognition to something that looked like concern. Dr. Martinez, I've been trying to reach you. The hospital said you were on indefinite leave, but we have a case. She's not a doctor, Marcus interrupted, his voice rising with desperation. She's my wife. She takes care of our home. She doesn't work. Actually, said a woman I didn't recognize, pulling out her phone. Dr. Elena Martinez is listed as the chief of pediatric neurosurgery at Metropolitan General. Here's her photo from the hospital website. She held up her phone. There I was, in surgical scrubs and a white coat, the version of myself I'd been pretending didn't exist for 3 years. Marcus grabbed the phone, staring at the screen like it might change if he looked hard enough. This is impossible. Elena, tell them this is crazy. Tell them you're not. I am, I said simply. The words hung in the air like smoke from an extinguished candle. Final. Irreversible. You what? Marcus's voice cracked. I'm Dr. Elena Martinez. I've been practicing neurosurgery for 12 years. I've performed over 800 brain surgeries. I've published 43 papers in medical journals. And yes, I saved Sophie's life. David nodded slowly. The tumor was wrapped around her brainstem. 3 surgeons told us to prepare for the worst. Dr. Martinez not only removed it completely, she did it without any neurological damage. Sophie drew me a picture yesterday. She wants to be a doctor when she grows up, just like Dr. Martinez. Marcus was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But you quit. You said you wanted to focus on our marriage. I took a leave of absence, I corrected. You said my schedule was interfering with your career advancement. You said the stress was making me difficult to live with. You said you needed a wife who could be present for your success. But you never told me you were chief of anything. You said you were just. Just what, Marcus? My voice was steady, but there was steel in it now. Just a resident? Just a surgeon? Just someone who didn't matter enough for you to remember what I actually did. The crowd around us had grown. I could see people holding phones, probably recording. Marcus's face was cycling through emotions: confusion, embarrassment, anger. Why didn't you correct me? He demanded. Why did you let me? Because you never asked what I did, I said. In 8 years of marriage, you never once asked about my work, my patients, my research. You asked me to quit, and when I said I'd take a break, you assumed that meant forever. You assumed I was nothing without you. Janet from HR was staring at her phone. Dr. Martinez, it says here you were nominated for a Presidential Medal of Honor for your work with veterans. You developed a new technique for treating traumatic brain injuries. Marcus looked like he might be sick. Elena, we need to talk. Privately. No, I said. We've talked privately for 3 years. We've talked about your promotions, your goals, your networking strategy. We've talked about what you needed from me to succeed. We've never talked about who I actually am. David cleared his throat. Dr. Martinez, I don't mean to interrupt, but we really do need you. There's a case at Metropolitan General, a 12-year-old boy with a spinal tumor. The family specifically requested you. I looked at Marcus, then at David. What's the timeline? Surgery's scheduled for Tuesday morning. The family's been waiting 3 weeks for you to return. Elena, Marcus said desperately, you can't just. Can't what? I turned to face him fully. Can't do my job? Can't use my training? Can't be who I actually am. You're my wife, and you're married to a neurosurgeon, I said calmly. You just forgot to pay attention. The party had essentially stopped around us. Marcus's colleagues were looking anywhere but at us, clearly uncomfortable with the domestic drama unfolding in front of them. David stood waiting patiently, like he was used to giving people time to process difficult information. How long? Marcus asked quietly. How long have you been lying to me? I never lied to you. I told you I was a doctor the night we met. I told you about my residency, my fellowship, my research. You said it was impressive, but that you were looking for someone who could prioritize family. So I tried to be that person. But the hospital calls, the late nights, the stress, were real, are real. Being a neurosurgeon isn't something you turn off like a light switch, Marcus. I've been consulting on cases this whole time, reviewing files, mentoring residents. I just did it quietly so it wouldn't interfere with your perception of our marriage. Marcus looked around the room, finally seeming to register that we had an audience. People are watching, he hissed. Let them watch, I said. I'm tired of pretending to be smaller than I am. David stepped forward again. Dr. Martinez, I hope you'll consider returning full-time. The pediatric unit hasn't been the same without you. I felt something shift inside my chest, like a door that had been locked for years was finally opening. I'll be there Monday morning. Elena, we need to discuss this at home, Marcus said, grabbing my elbow. I looked down at his hand, then back at his face. We're not going home together tonight. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that for 3 years, you've introduced me as just a housewife to people who respect my work. I'm talking about the fact that you've made me feel ashamed of achievements I spent 15 years building. I'm talking about the fact that you're more upset about being embarrassed than you are curious about who your wife actually is. Marcus's grip tightened. You're being dramatic. No, said David quietly. She's being honest. Marcus whirled around. Stay out of this. Actually, David continued calmly, I think this concerns me quite a bit. You see, I've been wondering why one of my company's marketing managers has been taking credit for strategy ideas that sound remarkably similar to surgical planning methodologies. The kind of systematic thinking that takes years of medical training to develop. Marcus went very still. I don't know what you're implying. I'm not implying anything. I'm stating that the campaign strategy you presented last month for our medical device client was based on surgical decision trees. Either you've been doing some very advanced independent study, or you've been getting help from someone with extensive medical knowledge. I stared at Marcus. You used my research? It wasn't your research exactly, it It was my methodology for pre-surgical planning, I said, the pieces clicking together. The decision matrix I showed you when you asked about my work. The one you said was interesting but probably too complicated for normal people. David nodded. That campaign won Marcus a promotion and a $20,000 bonus. It was brilliant work. Too brilliant for someone with a bachelor's degree in communications. The room was dead silent now. Marcus looked like he was going to be sick. You took credit for my work, I said. It wasn't a question. Elena, it wasn't like that. You weren't using it. You were on leave. I just adapted some of your ideas. You stole from me, I said quietly. You made me feel worthless while you built your career on my expertise. I turned to David. I'll take the case, and I'll be returning to full-time practice immediately. Elena, please, Marcus started. I looked at him one last time. This man I'd loved enough to make myself smaller for. The house is in my name. My lawyer will be in touch about the divorce papers. Divorce? His voice was barely a whisper. You wanted a housewife, Marcus. You never wanted me. I walked away from him, from the party, from 3 years of pretending to be someone I wasn't. David fell into step beside me. Dr. Martinez, he said as we reached the elevator, I meant what I said about the position. But I also want you to know, Marcus won't be with the company much longer. Plagiarism is grounds for immediate termination. I nodded. Thank you. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you stay quiet so long? I thought about it as the elevator descended. Because I thought love meant becoming who he needed me to be. I forgot that real love means being seen for who you actually are. The elevator doors opened to the lobby. Outside, the city sparkled with Christmas lights, full of possibilities I'd forgotten existed. Monday morning, I walked back into Metropolitan General in my white coat, my name embroidered clearly across the pocket. Dr. Elena Martinez, Chief of Pediatric Neurosurgery. I never looked back.